The world was suddenly pushed into a new and dangerous situation on the 28th of February 2026, when the United States and Israel carried out a planned military attack on Iran, starting one of the most dangerous global security crises in modern times. Explosions were heard across Tehran and many other Iranian cities as missiles and airstrikes hit important military and strategic locations. Within hours, the conflict spread beyond Iran's borders when Bahrain confirmed that the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet had been hit by a missile strike, sending shockwaves through military commands and political leaders all around the world. The sudden escalation pushed the Middle East to the edge of a bigger war, forcing governments, markets, and ordinary people into a state of high alert. From the very first moments of the operation, it was clear just how large the confrontation was. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that American forces had entered what he called major combat operations against Iran, working alongside Israel to destroy missile systems, military infrastructure, and strategic capabilities that Washington and Tel Aviv had long described as growing threats. The announcement confirmed that this was not a small strike or a symbolic action. It was a full-scale military campaign with potentially global consequences. The first strikes began with powerful explosions in Tehran, including areas near central government and military buildings. Israeli and U.S. forces coordinated the operation after months of rising tensions and failed negotiations over Iran's nuclear and missile programs. According to officials, the goal was to neutralize what they called an immediate threat posed by Iran's military capabilities and to prevent further escalation in the region. The attack, planned weeks in advance, involved advanced aircraft, missiles, and naval forces positioned across the Middle East. Before we go deeper into how this conflict unfolded, what triggered this massive joint operation, and why the world is now watching every move with anxiety, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. These global conflicts are changing the balance of power in real time, and staying informed has never been more important. As this situation continues to escalate hour by hour as the first waves of strikes hit Iranian territory, airspace across multiple countries began shutting down. Sirens sounded in Israel and nearby regions as authorities warned citizens to prepare for retaliation. Israeli officials declared a nationwide state of emergency and urged civilians to stay near shelters, expecting incoming missiles or drone attacks. The rapid shift from targeted strikes to full defensive positions showed just how quickly the situation could spiral into a wider war. Iran's response came fast and with unmistakable force. Officials in Tehran promised what they described as a crushing retaliation, warning that U.S. and Israeli military assets across the region would be treated as fair targets. The message was clear. Any attack on Iranian territory would trigger a response that would reach far beyond its borders. Within hours, that warning appeared to come true. Bahrain reported that the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet, a very important hub for American naval operations in the Gulf, had been hit by a missile strike. Emergency sirens sounded across the island nation as defense systems were activated. The targeting of such a high-profile military base showed a dangerous expansion of the conflict, raising fears that U.S. bases across the Middle East could become immediate targets. Military analysts quickly pointed out the importance of the Fifth Fleet headquarters located in Bahrain. It serves as the command center for U.S. naval operations across the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, and Arabian Sea. Any attack on this base represents not only a tactical escalation, but also a direct challenge to American military presence in the region. The reported missile strike sent shockwaves through defense circles and prompted immediate review of protection measures across multiple countries. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Iranian missiles and drones had also been launched toward Israeli territory in response to the initial strikes. Hospitals in Israel activated emergency plans and civil defense systems were placed on maximum alert as explosions and interception attempts were recorded in northern regions. The back-and-forth fighting between the two sides marked a dangerous cycle of escalation with no immediate signs of calming down. The joint U.S.-Israel operation had been months in the making. Military assets including aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and refueling aircraft had been sent to the region in preparation for possible conflict. Intelligence reports suggested that planning became more intense after nuclear negotiations between Washington and Tehran fell apart, leaving diplomatic channels strained and trust severely damaged. With negotiations failing to produce a breakthrough, military options moved to the front. President Trump described the operation as a necessary step to eliminate what he called immediate threats and to prevent Iran from advancing its nuclear and missile capabilities. Israeli leaders echoed that position, describing the strikes as early actions aimed at removing an existential danger. The coordinated messaging showed just how closely Washington and Tel Aviv were aligned in confronting Iran's strategic ambitions. However, the broader international reaction was one of alarm. Governments across Europe, Asia and the Middle East began issuing emergency advisories and calling for restraint. Airspace closures spread across the region as airlines rerouted flights to avoid possible conflict zones. Oil markets reacted immediately, with prices showing signs of instability as traders expected possible disruptions to supply routes through the Gulf. For civilians across the Middle East, the sudden escalation created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. Residents in multiple countries reported hearing explosions or air defense sirens as governments prepared for potential spillover. The memory of previous regional conflicts added to the worry, with many fearing that the current confrontation could grow into a long and devastating war. Military experts began analyzing possible next steps. If Iran continued targeting U.S. bases or allied infrastructure, Washington could respond with further strikes, potentially broadening the scope of the operation. On the other hand, if diplomatic channels reopened, there might still be a chance to prevent a full-scale regional conflict. But in the immediate aftermath of the February 28th strikes, the direction appeared dangerously upward. The targeting of the Fifth Fleet headquarters also raised concerns about maritime security. The Persian Gulf and surrounding waters are among the most strategically important shipping routes in the world. Any continued military confrontation in the area could threaten commercial shipping, energy exports, and global trade. Insurance costs for ships operating in the region began rising almost immediately as risk assessments shifted. Inside the United States, political and military leadership faced urgent decisions. Protecting American personnel stationed across the Middle East became a top priority. Additional defensive measures were reportedly considered for bases in Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and other locations potentially within range of Iranian missiles or drones. The Pentagon moved into high alert as backup plans were reviewed. Israel, meanwhile, prepared for continued exchanges. Air defense systems remained active, and reserve forces were called up in anticipation of further attacks. The possibility of a prolonged confrontation with Iran, potentially involving proxy groups and regional allies, loomed large. Analysts warned that the conflict could extend beyond direct state-to-state exchanges, drawing in multiple actors across the region. Global markets reacted with instability as investors struggled with uncertainty. Energy prices, defense stocks, and safe haven assets such as gold showed rapid movement. Financial analysts warned that prolonged conflict could disrupt supply chains and economic stability, particularly if key shipping routes or energy infrastructure were affected. The connected nature of the global economy meant that events unfolding in the Middle East could have far-reaching consequences. Diplomatic efforts intensified behind the scenes even as military operations continued. International organizations and world leaders called for immediate de-escalation and renewed dialogue. The challenge lay in finding a path back to negotiation after such a dramatic escalation. Trust between the parties had been severely damaged, and public statements on all sides remained highly charged. For now, the world watches as events continue to unfold. The joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran and the reported targeting of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain mark a turning point in regional and global security. What began as a coordinated military operation has rapidly grown into a broader confrontation with unpredictable consequences. Each hour brings new developments, new risks, and new questions about what comes next. As tensions remain high and the possibility of further escalation looms, one reality is clear. The 28th of February 2026 will be remembered as a day when the balance of power in the Middle East shifted dramatically, and when the world was forced to face the possibility of a conflict that could reshape the global landscape for years to come.